Sarah adjusted the strap of her worn but clean handbag and pushed open the heavy glass doors of the First National Bank. The air conditioning inside was a stark contrast to the humid summer morning, and the polished marble floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Sarah wasn't one for fancy things. Her sensible shoes, faded floral dress, and simple ponytail spoke of a life lived modestly, valuing substance over superficiality. She was here for a straightforward task: to transfer a small inheritance from her late aunt's account to a savings bond. It was a significant amount for her, something she planned to put towards her dream of opening a small community garden. She took a number and waited, patiently observing the bustling lobby. When her number, B27, flashed on the screen, she walked over to counter 3. A young woman with a crisp, tailored suit and a meticulously styled bob, name tag Ms. Albright, barely looked up from her computer. Next, Ms. Albright chirped, her voice edged with a practiced briskness. "Good morning," Sarah said, offering a small, kind smile. "I'm here to transfer funds from an inheritance." She handed over the necessary documents, carefully prepared and organized. Ms. Albright took the papers with a dismissive flick of her wrist, her eyes quickly scanning Sarah's appearance, then the relatively modest sum on the forms. A subtle change in her expression, a flicker of condescension, didn't escape Sarah's notice. "The humiliation begins." "Right," Ms. Albright said, her tone now noticeably cooler. She began typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard with an exaggerated efficiency. After a moment, she stopped, a small frown creasing her brow. "There seems to be an issue here, Oh, what is it?" Sarah asked, a touch of worry creeping into her voice. She double-checked everything. "The account you're attempting to transfer from, it's a legacy account. It has specific protocols for large withdrawals. This isn't just a simple transfer you can do over the counter." Ms. Albright leaned back, crossing her arms, her gaze sweeping over Sarah as if assessing her financial literacy. "It's a rather substantial amount for such a simple request." Sarah felt a blush creep up her neck. "Yes, I understand it's a bit larger than usual, but the paperwork is all in order. My aunt's lawyer assured me this would be straightforward." "Straightforward for someone who understands how these things work, perhaps," Ms. Albright retorted, a hint of a smirk playing on her lips. She raised her voice slightly. "This isn't like withdrawing from a checking account, We're talking about a significant sum of money here. It requires proper identification, proof of funds, and a managerial override. Do you even have a high-value account with us?" Sarah's heart sank. "I have my ID, of course," she said, pulling out her driver's license. "And all the legal documents for the inheritance. Proof of funds, not just a lawyer's letter. And a manager, as I said." Ms. Albright gestured vaguely towards the back office. "Look, we're very busy today. Perhaps you should make an appointment to discuss this with a financial advisor. Someone who can help you understand the complexities of managing such assets." Her eyes darted to a man in an expensive suit approaching the counter next to them, then back to Sarah with an almost imperceptible eye roll. Other customers in line began to glance over. Sarah felt her cheeks burn. She wasn't just being denied service, she was being subtly, yet publicly, shamed. "I just need to transfer it," Sarah pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "The lawyer said it was ready." With all due respect," Ms. Albright said, her voice dripping with false patience, "some transactions are beyond the scope of everyday banking. You need to understand that. We can't just hand over that kind of money without proper procedure. Do you even have a financial background?" Sarah stammered, feeling her eyes prick with tears. She could feel the stares of the people behind her. It felt like everyone in the bank was judging her, seeing her as incompetent, as someone who didn't belong in such a prestigious establishment with such assets. The billionaire husband's arrival. Just as Ms. Albright was about to deliver another cutting remark, a shadow fell over Sarah. A familiar, comforting presence. "Is everything all right here, sweetheart?" Sarah looked up, tears blurring her vision, to see her husband, David, standing beside her. He was dressed, as always, simply, a dark polo shirt, well-fitting jeans, and a pair of classic loafers. He looked like any other man picking up his wife, perhaps a successful small business owner, but nothing more. Ms. Albright glanced at David, a fleeting look of annoyance crossing her face at the interruption. "Sir, we're handling a customer. Please wait your turn." David's gaze, however, was fixed on Sarah's tear-filled eyes and the crumpled inheritance papers in her hand. His expression, usually warm and open, hardened imperceptibly. He calmly placed a hand on Sarah's back. "It seems my wife is having some trouble transferring funds. Perhaps you can assist her." David's voice was quiet, but it held a distinct undertone of authority that made Ms. Albright pause. "As I was explaining to your wife, sir," Ms. Albright said, her tone still dismissive, though now a little less sharp, "this is a complex transaction requiring a manager. She doesn't seem to grasp the procedure for such a substantial amount." She emphasized substantial amount with a patronizing air. David's eyes narrowed slightly, sweeping from Ms. Albright to the other bank employees and then to the security camera high in the corner. He took a deep breath. "I see," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerously calm level. "So, you're saying my wife, Sarah Sterling, is incapable of understanding a simple transfer because of the amount, or perhaps, because of how she's dressed?" Ms. Albright stiffened. "No, sir, not at all. It's just a matter of bank policy and proper procedure for large sums." "Is that so?" David pulled out his phone. "Because as far as I understand, the policy for this bank, and particularly for account 738-920-555, he paused, watching Ms. Albright's eyes widen, which is my wife's inheritance account, explicitly states that with verified ID and a notarized inheritance letter, an immediate transfer can be executed up to $10 million without managerial override for a legacy account holder." Ms. Albright's face went pale. The number David had recited was, indeed, one of the bank's most exclusive, private account numbers. And Sterling was a name that echoed through the highest echelons of global finance. David Sterling wasn't just a client, he was the client. The owner of Sterling Technologies. The man whose personal and corporate accounts held billions with this very bank. The turning tide. A man in a much more expensive suit, the bank manager, Mr. Harrison, who had been alerted by the sudden tension, rushed over. He had overheard David's last few words and seen Ms. Albright's terrified expression. "Mr. Sterling. Good morning. A pleasure to see you," Mr. Harrison gushed, practically bowing. He then shot a furious glance at Ms. Albright. "Is there a problem here?" David ignored Mr. Harrison for a moment, his gaze still fixed on Ms. Albright. "Ms. Albright, it appears you've caused my wife considerable distress and embarrassment, based on what seems to be a combination of prejudice and a complete lack of understanding of your own bank's policies." He turned to Mr. Harrison. "Mr. Harrison, this young woman has just publicly humiliated my wife, implying she is too unsophisticated to handle her own finances and falsely claiming a managerial override is needed for a standard transaction on a legacy account. Are these the standards of customer service First National now upholds for its clients? Especially its founding clients?" Mr. Harrison's face drained of all color. "Absolutely not, Mr. Sterling." "Ms. Albright, what is the meaning of this?" Ms. Albright was visibly trembling. I apologize, Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling. I misunderstood the protocol." David cut her off, his voice calm but firm, holding immense power. "Misunderstanding, or mistreatment. My wife came here simply seeking to complete a transaction, and instead, she was belittled and made to feel worthless. This behavior is unacceptable for any customer, let alone my wife, who, by the way, is the primary beneficiary and signatory on over $5 billion of assets held within this very institution." A collective gasp rippled through the stunned customers and staff in the bank lobby. The seemingly simple woman in the floral dress was married to that David Sterling. And she controlled billions? "I will be pulling all of Sterling Technologies' accounts and my family's personal holdings from First National by the end of the day," David stated, his voice resonating through the hushed bank. "Unless, of course, a more suitable resolution can be found for this gross display of unprofessionalism and prejudice." Mr. Harrison's face was a mask of horror. Losing Sterling Technologies would be a catastrophic blow to the bank. He turned to Ms. Albright, his eyes blazing. "Ms. Albright, you are suspended pending immediate review. Please pack your belongings." Then, he turned back to David and Sarah, his demeanor utterly contrite. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Sterling, I am profoundly sorry for this incident. It will be addressed immediately and severely. How can we make amends?" David gently squeezed Sarah's hand. "Firstly," he said, "my wife's transaction will be processed immediately, with the utmost respect and efficiency. Secondly, I expect a sincere, unreserved apology to my wife from every staff member involved, not just for the error, but for the disrespect. And thirdly, I want a complete review of your customer service training, particularly concerning how you treat individuals regardless of their perceived wealth or appearance." Mr. Harrison nodded frantically, already barking orders into his headset. A senior teller, infinitely more polite, was quickly brought over to assist Sarah, completing her transaction in minutes with apologies and genuine deference. As they walked out of the bank, the heavy glass doors closing behind them, Sarah leaned her head on David's shoulder. "You didn't have to do that, David," she whispered, a mix of relief and lingering embarrassment in her voice. He smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Of course, I did, my love. No one, absolutely no one, gets to treat you that way. Your worth isn't measured by your clothes or your bank balance, but by the incredible person you are. And anyone who fails to see that needs a harsh lesson." They stepped into the sunlight, David's arm wrapped securely around Sarah's waist. The world saw a simple woman and an unassuming man. But within the walls of that bank, everyone had just learned a powerful lesson. Never judge a book by its cover, because sometimes, the most extraordinary wealth is hidden beneath the humblest exterior, guarded by a fiercely loyal heart.